That's right, I'm no longer keeping bioactive enclosures for anything other than invertebrates. Now this is due to a number of factors, but mostly it has come down to when I assess the animal's welfare, bioactivity does not improve the welfare over just keeping my animals in a naturalistic setup. Now bioactivity has, for the most part, become a buzzword in recent years. It's exciting, challenging, and can prove to be an avenue for keepers to advance their care. But there also seems to be a confusing belief online that bioactivity equals good care or equals good welfare. You often see many posts on Facebook groups asking about going bioactive, and that's good. People are seeking progression, but you also see posts about bioactive rack systems and things. People are equating bioactivity with high welfare, and while I do equate bioactivity with high level of keeper, I do not equate it with high welfare without knowing the system or the setup, when realistically the increase in welfare from a naturalistic setup to a bioactive setup is not that vast. I've even seen some videos on YouTube of people setting up bioactive rack systems and then deeming it good welfare. I mean, we could go into how mind-boggling that really is, but as we've already criticised rack systems in another video, we won't go into detail here. Let's just talk about the differences between naturalistic and bioactive. I am now keeping my snakes naturalistically, and that means natural substrates, and is actually the exact same substrate mix as I used before, at a decent depth to facilitate burrowing behaviour, and where possible, moisture gradients, adequate UVB for optimal vitamin D levels, and a multitude of other behavioural benefits from UVB, near infrared heat sources for a more natural heat source, and the benefits of near infrared that comes with that, high output LED lights for increased deluxe, and the endocrine benefits that come along with that, Slate that absorbs near infrared and releases far infrared, multiple hiding opportunities that allow the snake to hide along the entire thermal gradient. I also lay out the hides in a way that the snake can throw out a single coil and bask cryptically if they choose to, and also leaf litter that contributes to cryptic basking further. In terms of husbandry, I will do a full clean when needed, and I'll start to look at doing a full clean maybe monthly, but it may be after like 3 weeks if it's particularly dirty, maybe after about 6 weeks, depending on the circumstances. And I will obviously spot clean in between that. When doing a full clean, I'll remove all the substrate, disinfect the enclosure, and replace with fresh substrate. Another benefit of leaf litter is that it will catch the feces before it even touches the substrate, and I can spot clean and replace leaf litter, prolonging the amount of time before I'll have to do a full clean. In terms of welfare, you can achieve everything you need to keeping this way that you can with bioactive. Of course, there are benefits in bioactive, like better air quality from plants and the microclimates that those plants produce, hunting enrichment in insectivore species from custodians. However, I made changes for the following reasons. Unfortunately, I have my bearded dragon enclosure beneath my snakes, and the basking temperature for the bearded dragon, as you can imagine, is considerably higher, so the heat transference from below warms the substrate in the middle of the vivarium from the bottom, meaning it's getting heated from below and above, and it just dries out, and it kills off all the custodians. Now this isn't even a problem in a naturalistic enclosure, as I just use moss and spray a hide for a humid retreat. I can get around the drying out of that portion of the vivarium. But feces in that area doesn't get eaten because custodian numbers aren't high enough. Now the feces doesn't get eaten in the hot end area, which is okay. I'd personally would do spot cleans in a bioactive anyway. However, even in the areas where custodians do persist, the build-up of frass from them isn't being broken down and recycled by plants as a natural part of the nitrogen cycle. My attempts at plants have failed due to the persistent and intentional uprooting by the snakes that literally shovel them out for the fun of it seems. So there's no ecosystem about it. The bioactive aspect isn't functioning as I would have liked. Now over time it just came to smell. In a well functioning bioactive system, it should smell earthy, not dirty. Now in arid systems, to function well bioactively, you need a deep substrate that remains dry at the surface, yet locks in moisture below for invertebrates to retreat to. The limitations imposed on me with the vivariums means the substrate depth that dries out too quickly and as a whole does not lock in the moisture below like I want and the custodians need. Another reason is invertebrates just escaping. Now this really isn't bioactivity's fault, but more poor enclosure design. I kept getting mealworm, beetles, etc. crawling across my bedroom floor, either crawling out of the ventilation or through the gaps at either end of the glass. Now I could easily block off the lower vents and put glass runners on the sides, but I do prefer the extra ventilation. Regardless, I would have had to do a full clean and begin the bioactive process again since the system had crashed, and for plants to fully survive, I would like to give them 6 months alone, or something similar, alone in the enclosure, to establish root systems that couldn't be so easily uprooted, and that would have been compromising the welfare of the snakes by housing them in rubs just so I could go bioactive. It doesn't really make sense at all. The only thing that I can truly say I'm missing out on is the increase in air quality from plants. But as I say, I didn't get plants working in the first place, and going forward I'm just going to include potted plants that can be removed during full cleans. And of course, I just want to say, this video was not made to scare you off bioactivity, but to provide you another practical perspective. Just as in some cases, the reality is, bioactivity isn't the right tool for the situation. That being said, I would 100% keep high humidity species in exoterras, etc. bioactive, because it's easy to achieve and it works well for that situation. All my spiders and other inverts are bioactive still. It's just that sometimes we need to think about what is sensible for each situation.